Bolivia, in the heart of South America, has no seacoast. All commercial traffic must cross the territory of Peru or Chile to reach a port on the Pacific Ocean. Besides Peru and Chile, Bolivia has a common border with Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil. Because it is landlocked, Bolivia must depend on its neighbors for access to the sea. This in itself is a problem, but there are graver problems facing the country. The country's first great problem is the Andes Mountains, which reach their greatest width in Bolivia, 400 miles across. Although they provide some of the most spectacular scenery in the world, they present an almost impassable barrier to surface transportation. Bolivia's second pressing problem is how to provide enough food for its 4 million people. The third major problem is the poverty and backwardness of most of the people. 60% of Bolivia's inhabitants are Indians. Grown apathetic after centuries of exploitation and frustration, they have lost their desire and will to improve their condition. The causes of these problems are closely related to the geography of the country. Bolivia has these three distinct geographic regions: the eastern lowlands, the Yungas, which are the lush eastern slopes of the Andes, and the highlands, where most of the people live. In the highlands, almost 3 miles above sea level, between towering ranges of the Andes, are the plateaus which the Bolivians call the Altiplano. Practically all the Indians living on the Altiplano are Aymara Indians. Their life is a hard one because this region is so high, cold, and dry that no food can be grown except the potato. In the mountains rising from the Altiplano, farming is even more difficult. Working only a tiny patch of ground with primitive tools, the Indian farmer can barely raise enough food for himself and his family. Potatoes are even cultivated on slopes so steep as to make farming appear impossible. The llama, related to the camel, is completely adapted to the bleak surroundings of the high Altiplano. This sturdy little animal makes life a bit easier for the mountain Indian. It furnishes wool, which the Indian women spin into yarn. It also serves as a beast of burden, carrying loads of up to 100 pounds. In and around a few cities are clustered most of the highland people. La Paz, Cochabamba, Oruro, Sucre, Potosí, Tarija. La Paz is the largest city by far. Just beyond this arch, but more than 1,000 feet straight down, is the city of La Paz, the economic capital of the country. The site was originally chosen by the Spaniards as a protection against the cold winds sweeping across the Altiplano. 4 centuries ago, around this small plaza, the Spaniards began to build a city where no settlement had been before. To this isolated spot, they brought their religion and their churches. Their architecture, and the Indian supplied the labor. Today, La Paz is a modern city. But the Indians are still here, and they dress much as they did in colonial times. Especially colorful is the attire of the women. Rarely are they seen without the distinctive derby-type hat and a baby well hidden in the shawls slung over their backs. Indians are to be seen on the streets in far greater numbers than in any other South American capital. The Indian population still supplies the workers for the mines in the highlands, just as it once did under Spanish rule. Today, small tin mines still use simple tools and hand labor. However, the bulk of the tin comes from large mines using modern technology. Tin mining is Bolivia's most important industry. But the cost of extracting the ore buried deep in the high mountains and in solid rock is very high. The railroad system has been built primarily in response to the location of these large mines. The main line of the railroad system extends in a north-south direction with 3 branches to the Pacific, to the Peruvian port of Mollendo in the north, then the shortest and most used route to Arica in Chile, and finally, farthest south, to Antofagasta, also in Chile. The cost is high of transporting the ore up and over the Andes and down to the Pacific ports. Nevertheless, the export of minerals accounts for more than 90% of the money Bolivia earns from foreign trade. It is also expensive to bring in food from other parts of the country to the mining areas. From the highland city of Cochabamba comes some of the food the altiplano cities need. Cochabamba is almost a mile lower in altitude than La Paz, but what a difference altitude makes. The city itself reflects the agricultural prosperity of the valley in which it is situated. The valley, virtually an oasis, is capable of growing a wide variety of foods. Melting snows from the surrounding mountains provide an abundant and unfailing supply of water. The soil is good. These fields are being plowed before they are planted to corn. Corn is used as a basic food and also to make a mild beer called chicha in countless Indian homes. The Indians of the Cochabamba Valley are very different from the Aymara Indians on the Altiplano. They speak Quechua, the language of their Inca ancestors. While Cochabamba supplies some of the food for the rest of the highlands, most of it comes from the Yungas, Bolivia's second geographic region. These rain-drenched eastern slopes of the Andes can grow almost any subtropical foods, such as bananas, cocoa, but growing on the hillsides of the Yungas is another crop of special significance, coca. The leaves of this plant are the source of cocaine, a pain-relieving drug. Chewed by the Indians, coca leaves allow them a respite from the world of hard labor and drab monotony. Coca leaves and all manner of produce are carried by trucks over the only road connecting the Yungas with La Paz. What a fantastically dangerous, narrow, winding road it is. The pass it uses to cross the Andes has an elevation of over 15,000 feet. Some of the rivers of the Yungas contain significant deposits of gold. Large-scale dredging equipment is used to bring up the sediment with the gold from the river bottom. As yet, no roads reach the mining sites, and everything must be flown in and out. The Yungas, the rich food-producing slopes of the Andes, give way to the vast lowlands of Bolivia, the third natural geographic region. The northern part is sparsely settled. Among its inhabitants are uncivilized Indians. For the most part, it is a dense jungle, drained by rivers which flow east to the Amazon. At present, the region has little economic significance to the rest of the country or the world. Moving south, rainfall decreases, and the jungle gives way to plains which are part of the great flatlands of South America. Conditions are favorable for farming. A major crop is sugarcane. A short time ago, Bolivia did not grow enough sugar for its own needs. Now it exports sugar. Here, trucks line up to deliver cane to a refinery. Santa Cruz is the only real city in the lowlands. Surprisingly, it's one of the oldest in Bolivia. It was settled 4 centuries ago by farmers moving in from the Atlantic coast rather than the Pacific. A boom in agriculture and recently discovered oil is changing life hereabouts. Ox carts are being replaced by jeeps. These particular houses were built by IMBO, a workers' cooperative organization. New schools have been constructed. Even a college. The new oil refinery in Santa Cruz is in operation. A small pipeline connects Santa Cruz and Cochabamba. With the completion of this bigger pipeline, oil can flow from Santa Cruz over the Andes down to the Chilean port of Arica. But the roads of Santa Cruz lead to nowhere, and its big problem, like the rest of Bolivia, is isolation. Santa Cruz is fortunate in one respect. A railroad already runs eastward into Brazil. As yet, there is little freight, but one day this railroad could become an important link in the transportation system of Bolivia. Today, as always, the main Bolivia durable barrier to transportation and communication imposed by the Andes Mountains. The cost of getting the tin out of the high mountains and down to the ports of the Pacific is very high. So is the cost of getting food from the lowlands, where most of it is grown, to the highlands, where most of the people live. If Bolivia is to have a bright future, it must face east. Its lowlands must be developed, and Bolivian products could then be shipped eastward across the level plains to the Atlantic.